Everybody, welcome back to the Swift AI Cybersecurity Compliance Podcast. And very, very excited to introduce our guest here today. Linda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Jeremy. My name is Linda Ohairwe. I am head of people and culture currently at New York Sunworks. And I'm originally from Uganda and I moved to the US several years ago. So I've been here for a while and I live in Jersey now.
Awesome, awesome. And I'd love to learn a lot more about your journey here and your career as well. So for folks who don't know, hey everybody, I'm Jeremy from Swift AI, device management platform for over 100 teams. Teams like PilotX, Simple AI, and Media love Swift because they save over 100K and 600 hours annually on meeting compliance to win sales, managing device and account access, and automating employee onboarding and offboarding. So let's dive right into it. Linda, could you tell us a little bit more about New York Subways?
Yes. So I recently joined New York Sunworks about 2.5, 3 months ago as head of people and culture. And New York Sunworks is a really cool nonprofit. I feel like it's a super innovative nonprofit where it combines education and sustainability. So we really work in the boroughs of New York as well as some counties and cities in New Jersey where we bring sustainable science education. So basically building hydroponic classrooms in the cities. We have teachers on staff who build curriculum.
And for our audience who might not know, could you help us define hydroponic classrooms?
Sure. So hydroponic farming is basically using light, water, so things not basically growing in the soil. So it's just using really kind of cool technology to grow plants, greenhouses. So all that stuff is hydroponic, and it's really really awesome. I think it's a great way to bring a fun way of science and education, especially for students in the city where there's maybe not enough land to kind of grow your crops and your plants and things. And also it's a great way to teach students and the youth about sustainability, about climate, how to be a better person in this world and how to kind of help climate change. And yeah, so that's what New York Sunworks does.
Awesome, awesome. I'd love to dive into it a little bit more. So, in terms of day-to-day operations, do you does New York Somewhere's partner with the local city government, organizations, schools? How does it actually work?
Yes, so we do partner with local public schools, a lot of public schools, and we do partner with the Department of Education. So a lot of our schools are through the DOE. We do have some charter schools, but most of our schools are through the DOE. And how it works is basically we get some proposals from some schools who are interested, who have kind of heard of us and who want to bring their our curriculum into their schools. So they apply for a proposal. They can get funding through the DOE or sometimes privately if it's a private school. And then we just kind of look and see, we give them proposal on how much it's going to cost to build a hydroponic classroom because this technology is quite expensive. And so, to be able to bring it to a classroom in the best way, we provide a breakdown. We also have people on our staff who kind of design the layout of the classroom to make it, the most appealing and kind of use the space in the best way. And then once all that's approved, we work with contractors who help us build the facilities. We also have staff who build the actual hydroponic material. So it's a little bit of a complicated process, but yeah, that's basically how it works.
Very, very cool. And I'd love to understand either when, you're working with the schools to sort of get them started on this idea or just things that you've seen, what um, could you sort of walk us through what is the sort of end result or the impact that has, say, on the school and also on the teachers and also on the students, right? Is it like a learning experience, right, where they're sort of learning as they're do the students directly work with the farm as well, or does sort of cafeteria food start to be using right resources from that? What's the sort of result there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's two main outcomes there. So there's the education portion. So we also do provide professional learning to the teachers because a lot of these teachers don't know about hydroponic farming. They don't know how to put the seedlings in, right? So we really also equip the teachers to be able to teach their students in the best way possible. So the one thing is the education. So teaching the students how to grow things hydroponically, during COVID, we also did send out STEM kits because obviously schools were closed. And so students were building it at home, which was really cool because it gave them an exciting project. And a lot of the staff, a lot of the parents had really great feedback. If you look at the reviews, we have really great reviews from a lot of parents who are saying, my child was really, really excited about this, STEM kit that you sent, and they built their own, little kit at home, and they grew their own, whatever it was, lettuce or some green leaves. So I think actually teaching people about how to grow sustainably, without using soil and just, little technology like that. That's one outcome. The second one is actually, yes, providing or having tangible products like lettuce. Yesterday we had a little harvest in our office where one of our team members showed us how to harvest lettuce, and I took some home. And so it's actually, you do bring out some food. In terms of cafeteria stuff, I'm not sure. I don't think it's gone that far, but I think that is a great suggestion in terms of like maybe donating some of that to the school and making salads or whatever. Also teaching people how to eat healthier and how to grow your own food. I feel like that would be a great way to incorporate that into actually the lunches as well.
Gosh, that's very, very cool. Hearing you talk about it, I wish I had something like that growing up. Um, and something so interactive and something where you could see, oh, I put in this work today, I get these results, however number of weeks later.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
I,
think that hands-on experience, because I remember myself as a student, I really enjoyed the classes that had hands-on, you're working, you're going around the classroom. The ones where I was just sitting and listening to the teacher were the most boring, and I found myself falling asleep. So I think it also gives the students something to look forward to, and also something for them to care for and grow, because they're assigned their own little station where they grow their own, seeds and see it through to harvest, seed to harvest. So I feel like it's a good way to make learning exciting.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, switching gears a little bit, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your day-to-day role on the team at New York Sunworks. Could you tell us a little bit about, a day in the life of Linda?
Yeah. So a day in the life of Linda is every day is different. And I think that makes it the most exciting. So I live in New Jersey. So I have to commute to New York 4 days a week. Take the NJ Transit, which actually is not that bad. It's always on time, take the bus, sit through the Lincoln Tunnel traffic, which is not my favorite thing. That's my least favorite thing, but I do just put on a little podcast and listen to news in the morning, which, helps me set up for the day. And then when I get into the office, a lot of people do come into our office, which is nice. I do love that team bonding and kind of getting to know people. And my day really ranges from dealing with employee relations. So, lots of different personalities on the team. A lot of people who don't want to talk to their other team members directly when there's conflict. So I have to come in as the mediator and kind of bring a
Oh,
solution. So that's one thing that I could deal with. Another thing would be recruitment. So, creating a job description, making sure that it aligns internally with our salary levels, our language, and all the requirements that we need to have someone on staff, posting the job, looking at resumes, interviewing people. So that would be another aspect, which in itself takes a lot of time because, interviewing is a recruitment is a whole job in itself. So, I do squeeze that in some days. Other days, it's, working with our executive director on strategic planning, really being a thought partner to the executive director, seeing, what's our head count, where are we looking to grow, just not only as a team, but also organizationally. Right now, it's New York Sunworks, but, what if we expand to Chicago or other cities, like thinking strategically in that sense and how we can scale and grow. And also just talking about things like budget and what we want to invest in professional development for our staff, what we want to invest in, promotions, when our promotion cycle is coming up next, how we want to motivate and keep our staff engaged, not only monetary benefits, but also how can we be more flexible, like, providing remote work options or other ways that people would want to stay that might not necessarily be money, where we are a great organization to work for. How can we do team building activities, like to keep our staff super engaged and, to keep that retention rate and our turnover super low. Another thing would be working on our open enrollment. So right now we're going through open enrollment. So selecting our health plans, determining how much we're going to contribute as an employer, which we have really great benefits. We contribute 100% of our employees' costs, which is fully paid for. I think that's a really great benefit that our staff loves. But also thinking strategically in terms of how we can change that. Maybe we can contribute a percentage to their dependents. Like really looking at our budget and looking to see what we can squeeze in to, again, have those great benefits, robust benefits, to stay competitive. So it's really a range of things, a lot of different things. It's payroll. It's talking to our HR specialists regarding several things, workers' comp. It's really, any day could look super different, but I think it keeps it exciting, and yeah, I really enjoy it.
There's so much that you touched on there that I want to dive into each of them. Starting with, so you mentioned looking into offering remote work opportunities. How big is the team, and is everybody in person, or is it hybrid? Is it work from home but near the New York area? How
Yeah.
is the team organized? Yeah.
Sure. So right now we have about 53 full-time and part-time staff. And it really depends on the role. So we have some of our administrative clerical staff who work in the office. Their job is administrative in nature. So for example, me, working on my computer, meetings, things like that. And then we have another side of operations. So we have our grow support team who are hydroponic specialists. So those are the people that are mainly going out to the schools, working one-on-one with the teachers, building some of this hydroponic technology in the classroom. So their job cannot be performed remotely. They have to be in the schools. They have to be working with the teachers. They have to commute, various areas throughout New York. So those are the two main areas. And then we also have some independent contractors that we work with to help us with our marketing. We have some graphic designers on staff. We have some finance people to help us with our grants proposals. So it's really a diverse set of people. There's, I feel like it's a good split of people who are out in the schools, administrative, and then some independent contractors as well.
Got it, got it. You mentioned I'm curious. So you mentioned around remediating, being a mediator for conflicts, right? Um, so could you give us an example of perhaps a time there was a conflict? What type of conflict was it, and uh, sort of how did you mediate it and sort of resolve it?
Sure. So when I joined the organization, this particular situation with two of our team members was something that I came into ongoing. I think the previous HR person wasn't able to resolve it, or their personality maybe was not suited for an HR role where you do have to be put in these situations where you have to be a mediator, you have to be able to put people in their place sometimes, because people love to come and say things, but it's at the end of the day, sometimes if you are in the wrong, then you have to be able to, you have to be comfortable to tell someone, hey, what you're doing is not appropriate. It's not appropriate conduct, per our handbook. So things like that. So this situation that I was walking into was two of our team members. One of the people was their job was kind of shifting into another area, and the other person thought that this person didn't have the qualifications or the right personality. And so there was just a little bit of clash in terms of thinking. And I think most of the times, just personality wise, they were super, super different people. And so a lot of that came in the form of passive aggressiveness in team meetings or emails. People love to be passive aggressive on emails, and sometimes they're not being passive aggressive. I think sometimes it can be taken the wrong way just because the tone of the email
Yeah.
maybe might be sent in a way that you think as the sender sounds good, but to the receiver, it sounds passive aggressive, so things like that. So this person had accumulated a lot of documentation, which is great. I always encourage people, if you want to come to, HR with a complaint, have some backup, don't just, I would love to hear, be a listening ear, but if you have some documentation or some interactions, that really helps strengthen the case. So I think that the issue was resolved by me telling this other person, hey, you're not in a situation to say that this person is not qualified. You're not HR, you're not their supervisor, you're not someone in a position of authority to say, like, I don't think X, Y, and Z is qualified to do this job. You can't say that. You are all on the same level. You're all on a team. You might have your own feelings about their qualifications or their personality, but I don't think it's necessary for you to say that. And so I think, in a work setting, try and keep things professional. And if you have any issues regarding their performance, you can bring it up to their supervisor or to me, and we will handle it internally. You don't have to handle anything. So the person understood, she said, okay, that's good. I understand. I won't do that anymore. And at the end of the day, I think it ended up working out where they're able to coexist and do their jobs and not be passive aggressive or be unprofessional in the work setting. So I think it was a good resolution.
No, I really appreciate that method. I think even just you coming in, right, and taking that initiative, that step within your role helps to sort of balance or sort of say, hey, like here's sort of the middle ground, right? Here's we got to do something about this. This can't go on, and one person might think this way, one other person might think this way, right? Okay, let's like level it and figure this out. The other thing was how you mentioned going back to the handbook, or just sort of putting the facts on the table. Hey, like this is your area of ownership. This is your area of ownership. These are the position roles, right? It's what you were hired in, it's in the contract, right? And this is just what everybody does, and this is sort of stepping beyond it. And I really like that. I was hoping, so this might be a bit of a challenging question here, but wondering if you could dispel one of the myths that I, myself experienced as an employee working at a big company, and just, rumors, and I haven't heard the perspective of HR on this, which is why I'm hoping to get yours. Talking to other peers, employees at this big company, there's a myth or a misconception that, oh, you can't talk to HR. Because if you talk to HR, you're going to get fired.
Mm.
Especially, let's say it's a conflict situation. Oh, I'm a sort of lower level employee. I have a conflict with this higher level manager, or maybe even VP, right, or director, or whatever. And if I go to HR complaining about them, I'm the lower level one. I'm going to get fired because HR is going to protect the company or protect the business or the revenue or the VP or whoever's making the bigger impact, whatever, regardless of what the conflict is. What do you say, or have you sensed that from your peers and counterparts, right, the folks you work with? And what do you say to sort of to address that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I've heard that a lot too amongst my networks, my peers, a lot of people as well. So I would say it really just depends. I'm going to be completely honest with you and say, yes, in some cases, you might not be able to trust HR because, yeah, you're right. They are in a position where they are, obligated to be protector of the organization, but also at the same time, they have to be a spokesperson for the employee. So I think the way I approach it in this situation is really building trust with the employees for them to feel like they can come and talk to me. And I am someone who says, Jeremy, let's have this conversation. You can tell me what's going on. If you have any issues with your manager, I want your consent. Do you feel comfortable me talking to your manager about this? Do you want me to keep it internally? Do you want me to escalate it to the CEO? So just having that frank conversation with the employee to say, do you, Jeremy, feel comfortable if I, bring this issue up? Because sometimes the employees might be scared, like, oh, if you go tell the CEO, they're going to think that I'm the one that's complaining and I'm just this employee that like doesn't know how to deal with conflict or whatever, so I think establishing that trust and that ability to ask the employee to get consent and to feel like they can talk freely to you. I'm going to be honest, not a lot of HR people do that. I think a lot, especially in the corporate world,
Yeah.
there's that stigma of like, okay, HR is the bad person and HR is going to go run and tell the CEO or whatever, and then nothing gets resolved, and then you feel like you're alienated as an employee, and then you can never go to HR with any issue because you just feel like it's never going to be resolved. I think it just really depends on the situation and the person, and if they're really able to establish that trust. Because I do think that if I were to be in a corporate situation, I would do the exact same thing. I would have, build that trust, talk to the employees, and then also just explain to the employees, refer to the handbook to say like, this is what, our grievance procedure is, and then ask them, what do you want to be the outcome here? Because if your outcome is, I want the CEO to leave, let's be a little bit more realistic. Like, what do you really want? Do you want an apology? Do you want, the CEO to come and talk to you directly? Whoever you have the conflict with, like, what do you hope to get out of it? Because I think that that's also a good way for me to understand, like, how can we resolve this, and also understand, is it something that's like doable? If you want the other person to get fired or something, then sometimes that's not realistic. However, and I always tell people this, always come with your documentation, especially if it's emails, Slack, recordings, whatever you can get, because that also helps strengthen my case, right? Like if you record your manager saying something bad, or whatever it is, and if you bring that to me and if it is against the guidelines or the conduct, the handbook, then there is a situation where the manager can go on administrative leave, or a performance improvement plan, or something more robust can be done, rather than just say, okay, I'm going to talk to the manager and say, you did X, Y, and Z to this employee, so improve your behavior, because sometimes I feel like that resolution isn't satisfying enough to the employee. Like, they want something a little bit more tangible, or like a red mark, or like something more, that feels like more impactful or more substantial. So I think it depends, but yeah, my approach would be the same in any corporate larger organization. But yes, that stigma, I do understand why it's there, and for sure it's there because it does happen in a lot of situations, but it just depends on the person that's working in HR.
Gosh, I really, really appreciate that nuanced approach, and yeah, what you say makes a lot of sense. I also appreciate you sort of from the HR people operations standpoint, going out and building trust with the employees. I'll meet you in the middle, and I'll say, after hearing you say that, I think half of that is also on the team members and employees to go and get to know the HR teams better, and also just any other teams better, right?
Yeah.
And you're all part of the same company, you're all part of the same team. Building trust with others, you never know, when they might need your help, and you can help them out, or they could help you out. So yeah, I think that's getting to know folks within the team is always a great idea. I want to shift gears a little bit, because I took a look at your profile. And so you're currently working at New York Sunworks. Previously, you were at Witness, and previously you were at the United Nations. So I'm so curious about all of that. I guess first, could you tell us a little bit about Witness for those who might not be familiar?
Sure. So Witness is a human rights nonprofit. So they work on defending and protecting human rights around the world. A really great nonprofit, a really great cause. I think it's a little bit, it's very different from New York Sunworks, because New York Sunworks is like an exciting and like really good thing, like bringing science and education and hydroponic classrooms, and like that's super exciting. Witness's work is great in a different way, but in a different light, because human rights abuses around the world are so many, right? And so some of our work can be difficult sometimes, working with partners on the ground to help train them, working with people in the US, for example, in police violence and what your rights are, training some smaller nonprofits on what you can do when you're asked questions, what you can and can't say. And sometimes actually being out in the protests, and in some of these countries like Brazil or, Myanmar, Burma, like those countries, they're super, super, what's the word, like authoritarian governments, right? So it can be very dangerous. It can be very heavy on the heart when you maybe can see someone that you worked with, a partner organization, that maybe got jailed or maybe even killed. That has happened a lot at our organizations. So I think there's two very different nonprofits, but both super great causes, super different teams, and super different kinds of work as well.
Wow. There seems to be a very clear pattern, right, from the UN to Witness to New York Sunworks. Um, would it be accurate to say that, actually, let me ask you, what was it that attracted you to work at organizations like these
Mm-hmm.
that seem to give back to the community, that seem to help other people, that's whether it's by education, right, for students, or to help with human rights, or just with the UN. What attracted you to this career, to working in this right yeah, in this role, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I have always been someone who wanted to work at an organization that is super mission driven, because people operations like HR, I can do that anywhere, right? Like I worked at Deloitte previously, which is a big four organization. So my job can be done in any kind of context. So I wanted for me to be able to be my best self, to be a strategic thinker, and to really be a thought partner in the HR space and the people operations space. I wanted to work at a place that has a great mission. I feel really good about my work. And even though my impact might be not direct, working for an organization that has really great impact, that's doing great things for the world, whether it's sustainability, whether it's human rights, whether it's the UN that does a variety of things, I think it makes me feel better as a person in this world to be able to say that I've worked at these organizations that are doing really good things. And it motivates me. It helps me do my job, to be honest, because I just feel so much better, and I'm able to be a more engaged, a better version of myself in the people space.
I think that's extremely admirable, and I feel like part of the reason why the world is in the state that it is not everybody thinks like that, or not everybody has that, or got the opportunity to learn it, let's say. I'm curious, where do you think that came from for you? Was it like a family member who inspired you, or a role model, or an experience you went through that maybe taught you that empathy, or yeah, I'm curious if you know where that might have come stemmed from.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in Uganda, which is a third world country. Obviously, it's not like the United States. It's a poor country, and there's a lot of disparity between the wealthy and the poor, right? So I grew up in a country seeing a lot of people who are a lot less fortunate than myself. People who are hardworking and try to provide for their families, and at the end of the day, they do their best, and it's still not enough because they're not able to live and sustainably, and like, just living in poverty. And so growing up with that, I think that really had a lot of impact, where I did, in high school, volunteer for organizations like the United Nations, for the young. It's EMUN, East African Model United Nations, for UNICEF. So all those organizations I used to help, volunteer when I was younger. And so that kind of early on instilled me to say, I'm someone who was fortunate enough to go to the United States. Like, how can I give back? How can I do my best, because I also obviously have to make my living. I have a family to provide for. Like, I also need a job, but where can I work where I feel like I'm doing something good and I'm helping in the best way that I feel that I can, right? So I think just having grown up in that situation and having seen all of that, and having been in a government where we've had the same president for like 45 years, super authoritarian government, and having seen not that much change in our country, where it's like super still backward. A lot of our laws, with transgender laws, just it's super backward. So I just felt like, having grown and having had that background, I wanted to work for somewhere that can have impact, where it's visible, and where I feel like my role, however little it is, in HR and people operations, does have that impact, because I am working for an organization that has a larger cause.
Um, I could be misreading this, but looking at your path from the UN to witness, right, working on these really challenging human rights problems, as you've seen, right, firsthand, in your career, to now focusing, it seems like, on students, on our youth, right, the kids. Um, is there something that you see that gives you hope, for the future? Is it that you see it in the kids, that you decided to pivot in that area, or yeah, I'm curious. Maybe just let me step back and just say more broadly. Throughout your experiences, have you seen anything that gives you hope?
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially with the youth, I think they give us a lot of hope, right? They're curious, they're innocent in some way, and they're super moldable, I would say, So having any positive impact, whether it's education at school or at home, or what they see, maybe their parents also work at organizations that have impact, like that also definitely has, some kind of impact on them. So I think, yeah, there's definitely a lot of hope, and it does give me a little bit of hope in terms of like the world that we're building. And yeah, I would say, yeah, I do see some hope and some light at the end of the tunnel with our youth here.
I'm really glad to hear that from you, given everything that you've seen and experienced. And I'm curious, through those experiences, whether it was growing up in Uganda, or volunteering at these organizations, or working at the places that you worked. what would you say is one of the most important things that you've learned, whether it's, career driven or just life experiences driven?
Mm. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I've always kind of been this way, like one of my good traits, I would say, as someone who works in people operations, is I'm a really good listener. And I think that's why I do really well in my career, because a lot of times when I work in these areas, people just need someone to listen. They need to vent, whether it's about their manager, whether it's about their family, whether it's about whatever it is. I'm always there. And even to my husband, I feel like I'm a good listener all around. Sometimes you need people to listen and not give you advice, right? Because people are always willing to say, like, hey, why don't you do this, or hey, why don't you do that? But sometimes you don't need to be giving advice. You just need to listen and take a step back. And I think, through the progressions of my career, whether it's with the UN or Witness, and having been surrounded by people from so many different backgrounds, I think the one common denominator in that is that everyone just needs someone to have that can listen, and can listen, take a moment, and maybe not give some immediate feedback. So I think that's the main big lesson that I've learned, and I feel like has helped me grow in my career and be successful and really enjoy the work that I do, because I do think that I'm a good listener and I enjoy to listen. I like to just be there as a listening ear and be empathetic. I feel like empathy is also something that I have, and I take pride in, because I can really connect, and that's where I build that trust with employees. And again, that's why I feel like I've been successful in my career, in some of these hard situations that I've faced. Just being empathetic and being a good listener has been a really good lesson.
That's so important. And I'm gonna ask you a follow-up question because what you said hit me right here. Because coming from an engineering background or my upbringing, whatever it is, my first gut reaction is to give advice, give feedback, or solve the problem, solve your problem for you.
Yeah.
It's engineering, right? You see a problem, you try to solve it, and that's my excuse at least. But um, growing up over the years, meeting people, having experiences, uh, I realized the value of active listening, and I wish so much that I can learn more active listening and less try to put the other thing behind me. And I'm wondering, as an expert in active listening, for someone who might be struggling to learn this skill, what advice? I just realized how backwards that question is, but you know what I mean. What might you say that might have helped you, right? Or maybe it was something you always had. I'm not sure, but what could you say for people trying to learn this skill?
Yeah. That's so funny that you say that with your engineering background, because my husband is a software engineer, and I cannot tell you how many times I've come to him. Maybe I've had a bad day at work and I just
Ah,
say, I need to vent. And here he is giving me solutions. And I'm like, this is not what I came here for. I just came here for you to give me your ear, sit back,
right.
let me vent. And he's like, well, let's do this, problem solving, engineering,
Yeah,
like
yeah. It's a
all of
math
you.
problem, right?
Yeah,
You have a problem on the left and you have an answer on the right. It's an equation.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how he's thinking about it. He's like, well, how this is how you can do that. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm just gonna go. And then we get into a low fight, but it gets better. So
What
as
would you say to your husband then?
yeah, and I think I give him this advice all the time. I think active listening, and maybe it comes naturally to some people like myself. I don't think it's something that I'm like going out and YouTubing like how to active listen or like reading articles, but I think um just letting that person talk, not interrupting, giving, cues that you're listening, that, whether it's face, because sometimes I'll be talking to someone and they're on their phone and they're like, no, I'm listening. You're not listening. You're dividing your attention. Maybe you're listening, but you're not actively listening to what I'm saying. You're passively listening. So being fully present, exactly. Giving those cues that you understand what the person is saying, acknowledging what they're saying, whether it's your facial expressions, nodding like you're doing, because that shows me that you're actively listening. So you're doing great. Um, and then, yeah, I think the hardest part is trying not to give unsolicited advice at the end, because I think trying to have that empathetic voice of saying, oh my gosh, I completely understand, like that must be terrible, I can't imagine how you feel, whether someone's telling you about how terrible their manager is or something hard that they're going through, and also just if you must give advice, then it's something just more on that empathetic levels to say like, oh, I had, a similar experience with my
Mhm.
friend or whatever, so not to show that person that they're doing something wrong or that they need to solve it necessarily, but just, saying that you understand on some level. I think that that's probably the hardest part for a lot of people, is not to give advice or to, say, well, you should try this or do this. I think people always want to help. And I think it's always done in a not
Yeah.
in a bad way,
Right.
right? They're trying to
Right.
give you advice to help your situation because you're coming to them, with a problem, but not necessarily a problem, but the person just wants you to listen. I think, yeah, that's my best advice. But I think for me, it's always been something natural. I've always been a good listener. And I think maybe because I've always also held positions of leadership from early on. I've always been someone in, whether it's student body president, head of people, whatever it is, I have had to be in situations where I just need to listen. I don't necessarily need to give my advice. And I think that's also helped me be a better leader because I'm able to listen, I'm able to be empathetic, I'm able to be present in that moment, and people are able to connect with me and feel like they've been heard.
Gosh, hearing you say that, and sorry if this is a gross misinterpretation, but hearing you say that, reframing it in the engineering mind, it reminded me of in engineering, when you're trying to solve a problem, you give it a solution and suddenly it didn't solve the problem. Oh, we were solving the wrong problem. We didn't root cause the problem or ask, understand the situation enough. And it kind of reminds me of that, where if you're giving advice, you're solving the wrong problem. The problem isn't they want advice, they would have asked you for it. The problem is they needed venting, they needed to feel heard and things like that. And I think at that point it's like, oh, okay, well, so I just need to listen. But gosh, Linda, thank you so much for speaking with us and sharing your wisdom and your experiences and just the beautiful journey that you've been on. The last question here is, who should reach out to you and what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so you can send me my email, Linda at New York Sunworks. You can reach out that way. Do you need a phone number too, or email is fine?
Oh, no, no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. And we'll have your LinkedIn and New York Sunworks website in the description as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, this was great. I really enjoyed this. I think you ask good questions too. I'll just give you some feedback, and I think
Oh,
you're a good listener as well. So yeah, I enjoyed this a lot.
no, I really, really appreciate it. And was there like anybody in particular you wanted to speak with, or who in the audience should reach out to you?
No, anyone can reach out to
Sure.
me. Yeah, I'm always open. Yeah, it's anyone.
Awesome, awesome. And the last plug for us, hey, if you are a business owner or cybersecurity professional and you need to compliance to close a sale, or to automate onboarding and offboarding for an upcoming hire, or device security just in general to prevent million-dollar breaches, you can start managing devices for free at swift.ai. And a special promotion for podcast listeners. If you know someone who needs device management, security, or compliance, refer us and get $100 referral bonus. Awesome. Thank you so much, Linda, for speaking with us today. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, Jeremy. Take care. Bye bye.